Good Tuesday morning, my beautiful people. So, first of all, let me say, hope everybody's having a great day. Weather is supposed to be hitting almost 70 today, and it is currently in the 20s right now, so we got almost a 40-degree swing. Wild. And let me also get out there, shop local. Shop with your local businesses, shop in your local area. Avoid shopping online. You know why? Because you're supporting American citizens, your neighbors, your community. Those dollars stay in your community, whether you're using a local travel agent to book a trip, whether you're needing a particular product. If you can buy that locally, buy locally. That only keeps money in your community, which will help your community overall. Now, with that little get on my high horse thing out of the way, I appreciate y'all for doing that. Thank you for doing your patriotic duty and shopping locally. But I had a conversation within the last week with a friend of mine, and it made me realize something. I think that we, as a whole, have we have some misconceptions. And I think we have some misconceptions on toxic masculinity and even toxic femininity for that matter. Yes, there is absolutely toxic femininity, and I'll get into that later. But I think there has been some confusion as to when somebody says toxic masculinity, what that means. I think that the idea that just being masculine, being male, is toxic, and that's not the case here. Toxic masculinity or toxic femininity is those traits that are usually gender stereotyped traits that are bad for you, are bad for your mental health, are bad for your physical health, whatever the case may be. A good example of that in the case of women is that you have these high beauty standards that you have to meet. You need to be thin but not too thin. You need to be pretty but not too pretty, because now you're intimidating. You need to have a backbone and stand up for yourself, but don't be too bossy. Like, these things, right, are examples of toxic femininity. And I think with regards to toxic masculinity, first of all, let me get some definitions out of the way. The Merriam-Webster definition of masculinity is the quality or nature of the male sex. I may not be getting that exactly verbatim, but that's pretty close because I looked that up this morning. And that's talking specifically about the difference between sex and gender. So sex is biological, what your biological makeup is, right? Like the traits of being a man, being a woman, being a boy, being a girl. The gender identity, gender norms are those things like women traditionally have, long hair, and I guess this is depending on your particular society, but here in America, a sign of femininity is, women typically have long hair, men typically have short hair. Women typically have no other body hair, with maybe a few exceptions. While men are allowed to just man feathers everywhere. Face, armpits, hair on their arms, hair on their legs, it doesn't really matter. Hairy chests, doesn't matter. Never mind that biologically speaking, hair is just a natural thing. A societal pressure or a gender idea is that women don't have body hair, men do, for example. And I don't think that in itself is necessarily toxic. Just saying. I think it taking to extremes, maybe, I guess, I don't know. But if you are putting yourself out there as male, there shouldn't be a problem with that, right? You want to grow man feathers and you're a man, grow man feathers. Nobody's telling you to shave that off. Nobody is telling you to do any of that. You want to go to the gym and you want to work out to be healthy. Nobody's telling you to do that either. Nobody's also telling you to, I don't know. I'm drawing a blank in like what would be neutral territory here. I think when we get into the toxic categories is these strict gender roles, right? Like the conversation that we had was it's the pressures on men to be successful and to be the person to provide for the household, and those typically cultural gender norms can be toxic. When you're told that you can't express any kind of heartfelt emotion. I know that in my family, it was very difficult for men to show affection. It was very difficult for even to their children, right? I don't know if it was necessarily seen as being perceived as weaker, or if it was something that, they just, regardless, they were brought up that they weren't supposed to do that. I'm glad that is starting to go the way of extinction. Like that, I'm incredibly thankful for. That's a toxic thing that while I'm sure still exists in some places, I'm seeing that disappear. And that's kind of a blessing. But there are societal pressures on men that are absolutely toxic. The fact that the only expression of emotion that men are allowed to have, seemingly, I'm sure there's going to be pushback on this, is either laughter, happiness, or anger. And there's not much in between. And it's so pervasive that when you see, for example, I've seen this on social media a few times where dads would learn how to do their daughter's hair because for whatever reason mom isn't in the picture anymore. Maybe they're a widower, or they got separated or divorced, or maybe they're just together and mom's the breadwinner and dad's the stay-at-home dad, which I'll get to that in a minute too. And they're able to, do something like that. And you'll find that you'll see tons and tons of women who will absolutely praise them for that. But in the videos, usually there's some kind of a comment about, I don't care what anybody thinks. And I think what that's targeting is they're not really targeting the women. Women can appreciate that. Yes, please do for this child. But what they're targeting is their peers, their male peers, who may have this idea that if you're able to take care of your daughter's beauty/hygienic needs, that somehow you're less of a man. Or that guy who sits down to have tea, or that guy with their daughters, or that guy who lets his daughter paint their nails or do their makeup on their dads. Like somehow that's less masculine. Or going back to the stay-at-home dad thing, if one part of the relationship, male or female, has the ability to have a career that allows the other parent to stay home and pay all the bills, and they're able to take care of business, while the other parent can stay home and take care of the family, the household, the child. I think that's an incredibly human thing to do, and that we need to stop criticizing the guys who not only choose to do this but can do this. Now, this goes to a toxic feminine trait too, and that's something where, because women are expected to be everything, right? We're supposed to be the sex pot, we're supposed to be the homemaker, we're supposed to be a high achiever. But then when we do one or all of those things, now we're criticized for it. I remember in high school there was a point in time where I would have loved to have been that stay-at-home mom and with my kids and stayed at home and done all that stuff and been able to see all the things that they did as they grew, and it wasn't in the cards for me. But I remember saying this in an English class because the assignment was, where would you like to see yourself in 10 years or whatever it was? And I said, I'd like to be a married homemaker. And I remember my English teacher, a woman, took offense to that. And I understand where that came from. But I think if you really want to have feminine equality, which is genuinely what feminism is all about, then respecting the decision of a woman who chooses to stay at home is just as feminist as supporting the woman who decides to not have children at all, possibly not get married, just be married to their career their whole entire life and enjoy their life on their terms. I think regardless of what those terms are, be they married and happy and a homemaker, or single eternally and no children and loving their career and loving that life, or somewhere in between, I think it's the choice, it's the freedom to be able to do both that is the cornerstone of feminism. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody who disagrees, but you truly want equality, then you should have the ability to choose, regardless of what that decision is, as long as it is good for you and it doesn't harm anybody else, because one person's freedom ends where another person's begins. I think we've forgotten that as a community. And I think that can extend to, I apologize, y'all, I don't know what is going on with this one area of my nose, but it itches like crazy and won't stop. I think that can extend to masculine traits as well, and the gender norms that we have placed on men as being the provider, and the guilt that they feel because some of them aren't able to meet those expectations. But I would like to change the conversation here, that being a provider doesn't necessarily mean having the biggest salary. It doesn't necessarily mean providing the household with funds, with whatever that may be. I get the whole hunter-gatherer or whatever, but that's not what the definition of provider should be. Provider should be something that is, you are providing a safe place for your partner. You are providing support for your partner. You are providing acceptance for your partner. You are providing a place of love and compassion with your partner, a place of understanding with your partner. I think if we start from this point versus these are the hard and fast rules of what, as a man, you should be, I think maybe we can change that. The fact that you've got to be a hard ass 24/7, 365 is ridiculous. It's unrealistic. It's awful, actually. Like, there are very few people who don't have some kind of pressures in their life, why is there this need to pile on the additional pressures, right? So what if your buddy decides to stay at home and in a heterosexual relationship that his wife is the one who brings home the bacon, right? Who's the breadwinner of that family? Who cares? Who cares, right? The person who stays at home, be they male or female, ostensibly is carrying the load of the bulk of the rest of the responsibilities, right? They're the ones who are ostensibly taking care of the house, taking care of the children if there are any. Lots of times this person is also handling the finances of the house, not just the physical characteristics of the house. Like, that's it. Like, it needs to be, any relationship should be a partnership. And anybody who tells you that a relationship is 50-50 is wrong. Either both partners are giving 100%, and at times maybe giving more. Like, for example, those of you who know me know that I'm going through some health struggles right now, and it's not over. In those times where I have been physically and unable mentally to handle whatever it is, my husband steps up and handles that, right? We have our strengths. For example, because of his sense of smell, he is an outstanding cook. And enjoys it, and absolutely enjoys it. He's not a fan of, if he's got a long day and then he has to cook later, like, he's not a fan of that, and I can respect that. But he really does enjoy, like, creating new recipes and adding his tweaks on things with different spices, and he can tell by scent what is going to taste good in something and what's not. So he's the cook for our house. I like to bake. You want something in the oven? You want something cooked? You want something cooked in the oven? Like a turkey or a roast, or, baked good, cookies, cakes, etc. I'm really good at sweets. Not to my own horn. Have I had some mishaps? Yeah, had one yesterday. Tried to bake some cupcakes, and my first batch went in the oven before I realized I forgot to put in the leavener. So they came out kind of fudgy. Anywho, we need to get away from these gender stereotypes because they're horrible for our mental health. This is what I'm talking about with being toxic. And I mentioned, toxic femininity. Women, we don't support each other nearly enough. And I mentioned earlier, you got to be thin, but not too thin. You got to be pretty, but not too pretty. Don't wear too much makeup, or at least don't look like you're wearing too much makeup. It needs to be all natural. But then again, if you look all natural, then you're not wearing enough makeup. There's all kinds of products. If you feel comfortable doing what you're doing, then do what you're doing, right? I will occasionally wear makeup, not for any particular reason, although when I do, it's funny because everybody will be like, what's the occasion? Why do you have makeup on? Because I just wanted to look extra special today. I felt like taking the extra time and putting on some makeup. I normally don't, because it's quicker, it's easier. My skin appreciates it. I get told, at least occasionally, that I don't look 50, which I appreciate a great deal. That I look younger than that. Sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's 15 years, regardless of what it is. I'm happy for that. As long as you don't think I look older, we're good. And even if, what difference would it make, right? How somebody else, and this is something it's taken me a long time to learn, how somebody perceives me isn't my problem. It's theirs. If I decided to go out in club wear, which I don't have the confidence to do, if I were to go out in some super skimpy club wear and there was somebody who looked at me either as a piece of meat or thought I looked skanky, that's not my problem. If I feel good and comfortable in what I'm wearing, that's not my problem. That's theirs. Teach your kids to understand that what a person does, what a person chooses to wear, what a person chooses to do is nobody's business but their own. If you choose to be a stay-at-home dad and take care of your kids, if you choose to wear a tutu because you're helping your daughter with her ballerina practice, or son for that matter, doesn't matter. If whatever you choose to do, because it doesn't fit into these little boxes that are masculine or feminine, what difference does it make? Does it make you happy? Right? Does it make you happy? If it doesn't make you happy, then eliminate it from your life. That's toxic. Things that make your mental health worse. That's what we're talking about, are things that are toxic. These stereotypes that you have to be, for masculine men, you have to be big and bad all the time, and you have to be the breadwinner, or you're somehow less of a man. Like, get the fuck out of here with that. Like, can we stop that? Can we really? Like, we are in the 21st century. Can we please stop with all of those just awful, mental health draining, depression inducing, end of life causing problems, right? Like, I don't understand why we're still doing this to each other. So I'm about to sneeze. So can we please just make sure that we are making it okay for each other to just be, to just live and be good to one another and be kind to one another. That's where we need to be. And I'm here for the end of this toxic, sex-assigned baloney. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye.